Madison, thank you for joining us to share your journey because we know there's so much we can learn from another person's experience in recovery. So, thank you for being willing to be so vulnerable with us today.
Absolutely. I'm glad to be here.
Well, one of the first things I always like to start with is understanding your recovery journey. How would you describe your recovery journey in one word?
I would say, in one word, that would easily be healing. I think that, in fact, I know now that I've been through treatment, the first step is admitting that you have a problem. And from there, luckily through treatment, they really guide you through the rest. But just being honest with myself, along with others in my life, allowed that healing process to begin. Even when it hurt really bad to tell people, but I was telling them something they already knew. And that was that I had a problem with alcohol. And so healing, is an ongoing process, but it's really brought balance and healing in my life, and everybody's life that's a part of me. So healing would be my one word.
And when I think about healing, what's so powerful about that is it's continual. Do you feel like, I know as you went through treatment and all of this, that you're still healing? Do you feel like you arrive, or is it still a process?
Absolutely. So sobriety is a journey, not a destination. And somebody said that to me, and I was like, okay, that is so corny, but it couldn't be more true. I mean, every day is different. I'm faced with different challenges. Um, and some days are really hard. And I would love to go and pick up that bottle of wine and enjoy it just like my girlfriends do. But I know that I can't do that. And I know that nothing is at the bottom of that bottle for me.
And I think that's so powerful to be able to have that realization, but it took you a while to get there. So I want to go
Yes.
back through your journey. When did you realize that alcohol was a problem for you?
Well, this is probably going to be the most difficult part of our conversation, Joy. Um, but I think I knew longer than I really admitted out loud that I had a problem. I knew that I was different, that something was wrong, but I wanted to blame it on different circumstances or that kind of thing in my life. But as I've gone through treatment and, in recovery, I learn more and more about myself every day. But it really started back when, I was a child. I had a lot of traumatic things that happened to me, um, and so it really, sorry, I'm gonna have to pause for a second. Um, so it really, goes back to my childhood. But when I knew that I had a problem, um, was, or my rock bottom, as most people call it, was whenever I was at my mom's one evening. I had been staying with her because my best friend had kicked me out during my divorce, because I had a drinking problem, and that became abundantly clear whenever I was living with her. Um, so I woke up in the middle of the night. I felt kind of funny. I thought, okay, well, I'll get up and go to the restroom. Um, it was probably about 3 in the morning, I would say. And I collapsed as I got out of bed and screamed. Um, my mom, of course, naturally rushed me to the hospital, and they did some blood work. But I looked down and my legs were about twice the size that they normally were. And a few days prior to that, they had started hurting. Um, and my doctor said, "Oh, it's fine. This is normal," because I had opened up to my doctor that about my drinking problem. That was really the only person I had talked to about it. But the ER physician said, "Madison, I'm not asking you if you drink, but I'm asking you how much. And I need to know right now." And luckily, my mom had gone to the restroom, because had he asked that in front of my mom, I don't know that I would have had the strength in that moment to say something, um, because that's never something a mother wants to hear about their daughter, you know?
Mhm.
So, anyway, with his help, we spoke with my mom. And my mom, being the woman that she is, God love her, she accepts the challenge and she runs with it. And I love that about her. And so she luckily had this friend that was in, she had gone through treatment. She had been sober for over 20 years. And later she became my sponsor. But we were able to connect with her. And then she got me into Greenhouse. But my rock bottom was truly hitting rock bottom on the ground.
So you would come to learn that the alcohol had caused neuropathy?
Yes. So doctors could never exactly pinpoint it, but the belief is that it was alcohol neuropathy. So very similar in what you see in diabetic patients. But mine was so out of control that it was causing, um, I would joke, if somebody looked at my feet, they would hurt. And that's just kind of a big picture into how bad they really hurt. I couldn't wear socks or shoes or touch anything. I mean, it hurt to put pants on. Um, and so we believe it was alcohol neuropathy, and they were able to see all of my blood results. Everything was off the charts. Everything was wrong in my system. And that's how the doctor knew, because my blood work told him.
Mhm,
And I'm sure he could smell it on me at the time.
mhm. Did you ever imagine just the health toll that alcohol could take on you?
Never. I could see how maybe it would hurt relationships or it would impact certain situations, but the physical part of it, that is something I had never seen, even in, the movies or stuff like that. You don't see that part of it. So no, I never imagined it would get to where it got.
And to understand how you got to this place, I know you kind of touched on it a little bit, but it started in childhood. You weren't drinking in childhood, but there were things that you experienced that got you to this place. Tell me how your childhood and just things you experienced along the way led you to pick up that first drink and it got to the point that it did.
So my story, obviously, I mean, it began a long time ago. I remember as a younger girl, um, kids would make fun of me. My nickname was Fatty Maddie, and I love my sister, but she's the one that make made up the name, and so everybody started calling me that. Later in middle school, I was diagnosed with epilepsy. I had to go through full treatment for that. That's involving experimenting with different drugs to see what works best for you. And that really left me feeling different from others, or maybe not as accepted because I was different. And whether that was a truth or not, that's how I felt. Um, and all of that didn't really come to fruition until I was able to open up about my addiction. But I would say the biggest thing that happened to me is someone I really, really trusted in my life that was very close with me. I don't believe in getting even, so I'm not going to share who that was. But someone very close to me did sexually abuse me. Someone very involved in the church that you really thought that you could trust. And so I became angry with God, with my higher power, for many years. And in fact, I kept it to myself for over 20 years that had even happened to me, because of the way I grew up in a very conservative background. You just kind of put your head down and you make it through and you smile while doing it. And so that I wanted to almost believe it was a nightmare and that I could just push it out of my mind, but I couldn't. And I think that fed into an unhealthy marriage. And I wanted to have a healthy marriage. I ended up having my son at the age of 24, went through a divorce. I then got remarried. And then because of my addiction, and just some differences within that marriage, I ended up leaving that marriage as well. Um, so that's a lot for at the time. I was, I guess, 34 for a 34-year-old woman to go through. That's quite a bit. And I've always known that I'm strong, but at some point, which I believe was my gastric bypass surgery that I had back in 2017, at that point, because I was able to hide those feelings with food, I had what's called transfer addiction. Um, and apparently, after doing some research during my recovery, I've learned that 30% of people who have gastric bypass surgery actually get transfer addiction. So that can be to alcohol, drugs, shoplifting. There's a lot of other addictions, but it can also feed into a healthy addiction like working out. Um, and so, unfortunately, I was a part of that 30%. And the second I took my first sip, it gave me that warm and fuzzy feeling of, okay, I'm okay. I can relax. I can suppress. And I didn't realize what I was doing. I would have never taken that first sip, because it changed my life for better. I mean, for the worse at first, but now for the better, in recovery. And I'll let you know, just a side fact on that is every person that was my roommate, and you get a few through treatment, you get a few different roommates, and every single roommate I had, with the exception of one, had had weight loss surgery, and they were all alcoholics.
And that's when
So
you went to treatment.
that's when I went to treatment, and I said it was my aha moment of, it's not just me, and it gives me just tingles talking about it and thinking about my friends that have been there for me since day one, that truly went through the same thing that I went through.
And I think that's something really important for people to realize. First of all, that you were coping with food, right? You had, of course, the fat shaming as a child, and then the sexual abuse, and then going through divorces and all of this. And all through that time, you didn't even probably even realize that food was a coping mechanism. Go in to get gastric bypass surgery, come out of that and say, oh my goodness, look what has happened just from taking a drink. Prior to that, had you ever had alcohol? Or had you ever noticed any challenges with alcohol at that time?
Definitely no challenges. I would maybe have a beer on the weekend. I would honestly look at other people and kind of get a little judgy with them, um, because at the time prior to my surgery, I could, control it per se. Um, I definitely did not have to drink to live. So.
That is interesting, and I think something that so many people need to realize. The fact that there could be this transfer of the addiction as a new coping mechanism, that you turn to alcohol, and then to go to treatment and see that several women around you were dealing with the same thing. And I know you said it was kind of a relief. When you say it was a relief, was it more so that you had blamed yourself all these years as you were dealing with this, or just knowing that you weren't alone?
I think it was a combination, but most of all, knowing that I wasn't alone, that there were other people, and I'm not going to say that have done worse than me, because I've pretty much done the worst, but they had lost their families, their children, their jobs. There were so many things that they had lost, even more than I had already lost. And to see that happen, thank God they did not lose their walking like I did, but they did lose other things. And so we had that loss that we were almost mourning together, our loss in life. And those ladies, I mean, were amazing, and truly some of the most amazing people I met were in recovery. And I had a girl, I remember, and I recently actually went and saw her in the hospital, but she would pray over my legs every single day, with no fail. She was very strong in her faith. And one day she said, "It's going to be soon. It's going to be soon." Every day she would say. And one day I stood up and I walked and I called her, just bawling. And so and that's one very small example of an amazing person that I met through recovery. But having someone that is like-minded and they want the best, but they don't know how to get there, and they're there side by side with you through that journey, there's no better feeling.
Mhm. And I think what is so powerful about that is when you came into treatment, you were in a wheelchair. We actually have a picture of you. You were in a wheelchair because of the inability to walk, because of the neuropathy and the pain and all of that. How long were you in that wheelchair before, as you're going through this recovery journey, you're able to walk again?
So from when I was in the hospital to when I actually checked into treatment, there was a few days in there. I literally had to sit on the couch. If I had to go to the restroom, because my mom's much smaller than me, I had to crawl to the restroom to use the restroom. Obviously, I didn't have a wheelchair at home. But my best friend, my two best friends are married to each other. My best friend actually carried me into treatment. He's kind of like a big brother to me. And he picked me up out of that car and he said, "Sister, we're going to make it through this." And the hell I had even put them through, for him to still be there to support me through that. And it was that day when he picked me up out of the car, carried me into the lobby. They said, "Ma'am, you look like you could use a wheelchair. Would you like a wheelchair?" They were very kind about it, non judgmental. Um, And I said, "Yeah, that sounds really great," because I couldn't get around. So it was that day that I sat down in the wheelchair and I thought maybe it'll be a day or two and I'll be fine and I'll get over it, move on. But of course, I checked in. I go into detox. My first night there, I had a few nightmares, of course, because you don't have alcohol. Your mind is going crazy, playing tricks on you. And I got up in the middle of the night once again to go to the restroom and I fell. Luckily, they had me in a handicapped room where my roommate had a prosthetic leg. Um, and so she knew the pain and suffering that I was going through, and she laid there by my side, and they came and helped me back into my bed. Um, it just kind of ties back to the impact of the people there that they really had a big impact on me. But I was in my wheelchair all through uh, inpatient treatment.
Wow.
My last day, though, my, I guess, graduation day, as they call it, I had told my counselor my first week there, I said, "I want to walk out of this place stronger. And I want to physically, not just mentally strong, I want to physically walk out of here." And she said, "Well, I can't make promises, but I will do everything we can to get you there." And so every day she would come and check on me and say, "Were you able to stand today? If you weren't, can I help you? What can we do?" I mean, she was constantly trying to find out what my goals were and meet them. And so my last day, sure enough, it wasn't for a very long walk, but I was able to walk down the hallway. I was kind of strapped to her, and she's also very small. So I was kind of strapped to her walking, and I walked into the ceremony and just not only was I crying, but the entire room was crying too, because they had either been my roommate or they knew me or, they saw me struggling because they couldn't help me wheel around. I had to wheel myself around due to policy, which is totally understandable. And so they had seen the impact that alcohol had on my life and how much pain and all of that I was going through. So there was not a dry face in the room whenever I
Mm.
stood up there and I took that microphone um and so of course then I did have to unfortunately sit back in my wheelchair for another about 3 weeks. But 3 weeks into my outpatient treatment, I was in bed. I was getting up for class one morning, and I had noticed the day before my swelling had gone down quite a bit, and I was able to stand and not ever sit back in that wheelchair again. I had to push it around as a walker for a little bit, because if you've ever seen a newborn calf, that's what I looked like. And so it was the most amazing feeling, and just that cherry on top of, this is why I'm getting sober. That wasn't necessarily the reason I was, but it was just proof of everything that alcohol had put me through, and then I had let it take over my life. That was just the proof to me that I could overcome that. And I think God knew that's what I needed to feel and to see. And so I was so blessed that day to be able to walk again.
And I mean, it's so evident why you chose the word healing as part of
Yes.
your journey, because you not only went to through a physical healing, which we can hear being able to walk. Sounds like you went through a spiritual healing, reconnecting back to God after being angry, after all the stuff that you went through, and then just the emotional healing of all the women rallying around you, and just the love that you felt in treatment at Greenhouse Treatment Center, not just from the staff, but for the people who were there. When you went into treatment, I think that a lot of people have fear. They don't know what to expect. They say, "Is this going to be for me? Maybe I don't need to do this. Maybe I could do it on my own." How did you get to the place of surrender and saying, "I know I have to be here and I know this can work for me"?
So obviously, it took me quite a bit to surrendering. I think it was a few things. It was the doctor, right? So there were a few stops that it was Madison, wake up, Madison, wake up. And so it took the doctor telling me, my friends telling me, my family telling me, like, Madison, you have a problem. But most of all, it took my son, who's now, he's going to be a teenager this year. But it really took him saying, Mom, and at the time he was 9, 10 years old. He would scream, throw himself on the ground every time we went to the store, saying, please, mommy, no, please, hoping someone else, I assume, would hear him and they would stop me. But that didn't even stop me. What really, truly was my moment in surrendering was when I had no other choice. It was do or die.
And how would you describe surrender? Because I think a lot of people hear that, even people that go through 12-step programs, like, you have to be willing to surrender. And people are like, what is surrender? Like, we hear it, but if you had to describe it, how would you describe or define what surrender was like for you?
Surrender for me was dropping all of the cares in the world to ensure I put myself first, but also have a higher power, and to remember that no matter what, he is in control. No matter what I do, I have to surrender to what he wants, not what my family wants, not what my friends want, not even what maybe my therapist wanted, but what does God want for me and what is my higher calling? And so that was my surrender moment of where I said, take me, take all of me, do with me what you will. I probably deserve jail and I deserve this and that, but you tell me how to live and I will do it.
Hmm.
And I've done nothing but that. And so in fact, got rededicated when I was out of treatment as well. But surrendering is, I thought it would be the hardest part of it. It really and truly, it was so empowering for me,
Mhm.
to not feel as if I had to carry the weight of the world on my shoulders anymore, to know that I wasn't alone. Um, and just, really giving that to God and I have to do it every single day. Still to this day, for the rest of my life, I've just surrendered to God every morning, every moment, and everything I do.
Mm. Now, when you had that surrender moment, I can feel you kind of like reliving that moment. Was it almost like an instantaneous, like a flip switch, or was it a process?
I think all of recovery is a process, and it looks different for everybody. Um, for me, it really was more of a pretty automatic switch of that do or die. So, Madison, you have to do this. But I'll tell you exactly where it happened. Was I was in bed. It was about 2 a.m. I was in detox, and I could have easily been imagining things. I'm not sure, but I had a conversation with God, and I didn't really know that you could have that type of relationship where you just throw it all out, right? I grew up a little bit differently than that in my faith. And I just had a conversation with him like I would have with the person I trusted the most in this world. But it turns out that's who I should have been trusting all along. And so I sat and I cried and I talked and I screamed. I begged, I did all of the things. And I'm so grateful that I did, because I could truly feel him,
Mhm.
almost as if someone, your best friend, was just giving you a hug, comforting you, telling you it's going to be okay. That's what it felt like. And you can't really explain that to someone without them probably thinking you're crazy until it actually happens. I've been a Christian since I was 5 years old, and I had never had that um, with God before. I had never had that conversation or that desperation, that need for Him in my life.
And that need, like you said, you ended up rededicating your life to God. You go through treatment. You're how many years sober now?
I am 2.5 years sober, almost 1,000 days.
Wow, I love that.
Yes.
1,000 days sober. And so
Yes.
as we kind of wrap up on this, there are a couple more questions I wanted to ask you. If you were to explain to someone what treatment is like, I know you go through the detox process, but then just being in treatment, is it, how would you describe it? Is it getting to know yourself? Is
So
it,
at first, especially, uh, oh, sorry. Are you there?
mhm.
Okay. So to describe rehabilitation or treatment, like I mentioned, I did not grow up around alcohol, drugs, any of that. My worst fear was going somewhere where all of these crazy people were, right? I was like, no, I'm different. I'm not like that. I don't need that. Um, but from the moment I got there in treatment, I mean, the nicest people. From the moment you walk through that door, they greet you. It was a little bit intimidating. You have to do, your drug test and your breathalyzer and all of that. They're just doing their job. But once I got in there, I got settled. I made it through detox. It was almost like adult summer camp. I know that sounds kind of weird, but it really was. You had constant activities. You were in class learning. You were getting to know people. You were setting yourself up for success, not to relapse. But you were still able to balance where you were able to stay in contact with your family. Um, you had rules that were set up in place that you couldn't do certain things. And if you did those, you could no longer be in treatment there. So it really allowed stability. I knew where I was going to sleep at night. I knew what was going to happen the next day. The food was good. You could have cereal 24/7 if you wanted to. It was fantastic. They even had, originally I had seen on the website, I went, because it truly, I think it used to be a spa or a hotel or something. But it's beautiful. It is absolutely beautiful. When you walk through the doors, the smell, I wish I could just put that in a candle. um, but there was a pool and a spa. So I really just thought I was like going to live at a hotel, and I wasn't going to be responsible for anything. And it was just going to be a magical cure all. But they did have all those things, and they were fantastic. But there were hard days too. But all of that, all of the hard days was because I had to be accountable. And so that, I had gotten really bad at being accountable, whether it was at work, at home, as a mom, you name it. I was not accountable at all. And I wasn't being held accountable either. And so it forced you to really look in the mirror. And yes, it may be a little intimidating, especially for someone who's not familiar with addiction and recovery, but it is so worth it. And it truly changed my life. And I will to this day tell anybody, and I've in the field that I work in, I said, I will walk with you hand in hand through that door if that's what you need.
Mm,
And I have done that.
mhm.
And so for anybody who is even thinking about seeking treatment, find a way to do it. There's free avenues. There's plenty of avenues that take insurance. There's just so many options out there. And so I jump all in, just jump in feet first and go, even if you don't know what to expect. It's so bright on the other side of it.
And I think that's so powerful because a lot of people think they can do it on their own. But what is it about treatment that you learn that you couldn't just do on your own? And I think that's something a lot of people wonder, like, why can't I just do this on my own?
So one of the first lessons I remember getting in there was you can never drink again, right? And you would think it would be common, but I was like, oh, you just mean like right when I get out, I can't drink. They're like, no, you cannot have a drink ever again. And of course, that's not to make you feel like you're missing out, but you have to truly realize that you have an allergy. So, just as if you are allergic to, I have some Skittles sitting right here. If I'm allergic to Skittles, then I cannot have those or I'm going to break out in rashes. But this allergy is different and it causes these life problems. And for me, it truly was physical as well. But that was a big thing I learned is that this is an allergy. It's also a disease. I mean, it completely takes over your brain. And so those are things that I learned that I had no exposure to before. And that I'm really glad that I learned not only, I mean, yes, you have to take accountability, but you also have to realize that this is what alcohol is intended to do. It is intended for you not to fully be yourself and to mess your brain up. In fact, it takes your brain, they told me 7 months it would take my brain to be normal again. And it did take that probably a little bit more. And so, just those small things that you learn, you meet with different organizations as well. People come in and they tell you their story. So you're meeting, I mean, you're never bored there. You get to know more about yourself, you get to know about others, what worked for some people in their journey or what did not. Um, and so absolutely an amazing experience.
Mhm. Is it almost too like you get to unpack? Because you said you had the childhood trauma, the sexual abuse and all of that. Was this a time to unpack that and figure out ways to kind of process emotions? Because you said it started with food and then you had it transferred into alcohol. Did you learn techniques for how to deal with emotions or all of the stuff that had built up over the years?
Yes, and luckily I was able to unpack a lot of that in my inpatient treatment. I made it clear to them, once they did my evaluation, I really want to get as much of that out of me as I can while I'm in this safe environment so that I can continue healing, but really focus on me versus my trauma, if you will, right? Because you have moving forward and then you have the history, but the history ties into the moving forward. So, but definitely, I mean, I overcame a lot of that while I was in therapy. There was a lot of tears shed there. Uh, And I continued that through therapy outside of treatment. I also came up with a prevention relapse plan with my team. And then I think I attribute a lot of my success to the medical plan that they provided me as well, because it was physical and mental. So getting my dosages correct with my medications and everything like that was very critical for me. Previously, I had never um, medicated for like anxiety, depression, those type of things. I just thought that's how I am and that's how I'm going to be, and there's no way around it. And I was very lucky. I'm on very low doses, but it was truly life changing. Just to help me when I felt those mini panic attacks coming on or really heavy in my chest and those type of things.
And today, to see you today, I know you're doing a lot. You said you're going to be writing a book. You're going to be telling
Yes.
your story. So, where are things for you today? I see you're all smiles. You look great.
Thank
But how
you.
would you describe what's next for you and where you are?
Yes. Yes, my goal is to write a book. I'm not even sure where or how to start that process, but I've had so many people when I'm sharing in HNIs and that type of thing, of you have to share your story. Like your life story could be a movie. And so I thought, well, I think a book would be a good place to start. And I've never really written a book or anything like that. But I think with the right help, hopefully I'll be able to do that. But otherwise, I really am just excited about being present in my child's life. He's, like I said, he's going to be a teenager this year. I am a solid coworker. I show up to work. I don't leave early. I'm there for my family. I've made amends with all of them. They're very supportive of me. I also will continue to draw my boundaries as I have with some of my family and friends. I've had to do that because it wasn't healthy for me. Um, but I just see a beautiful, beautiful future. If it's anything like it's been the last 2 years, it's going to be amazing. It's always a journey and always a roller coaster. And I love sobriety, and I know going from someone that drinks every day that can hardly get out of bed to being the person where I'm excited to wake up in the morning and contribute to society and be at my son's game to watch him play. I don't recognize who I was 2.5 years ago. I look at that picture, that black and white picture, and think, who was that? I was a shell of myself. And so I'm excited for the future. I don't know everything to come, but I think there's a lot, and it's going to be beautiful.
I definitely think so too, because when you think about, as we wrap this up, when you think about just sharing our journey, somebody who's played a big role for you is Jelly Roll. You listened to his music, you said before you got sober and all that. So our stories and our journeys make a difference. So when you think about how that ties into you and just his willingness to share his own journey through song, and now your willingness to say, hey, I'm going to put myself out there on this podcast, and then also with the book, how do you see that all kind of full circle?
Well, full circle, I think it's amazing that what I've learned is through Jelly Roll, through his song "Save Me." He You see in his music, there's so many different songs at different phases of addiction and recovery, and so that's what's so beautiful about his music to me. Because I used to listen to "Save Me" and just cry in my car alone. um I was in a very dark place. I was just wanting someone, anybody, to take me out of that horrible place that I had put my own self in. And then smile so much. Everybody's like, "Oh, you always smile all the time. How are you always so happy?" And I jokingly will say, "Well, you should have known me 2.5 years ago. You would not have said the same thing." So smiling through even those toughest days to his song, "My Cross," which is about him and his kids. That he went through all of the pain and the trauma and the hurt so that they don't have to. And so that's my song, for my son, is I am willing to carry whatever I have so that you don't have to. I'm willing to do better for you so that you don't have to experience this same thing. So full circle, I would absolutely love to meet him and his wife one day. But you never know, it could happen. But I do love that it does show, no matter what your background is. He came from poverty, addiction with his family, incarceration. I had never had any of those things. I came from a background of faith based community, stability. I had, a mom that was there for me. I had everything pretty much given to me. Um, but we still both had traumas, even though they were different. And addiction does not discriminate. And so that's what I love about him, because he does show his part of it, but it goes across to so many people, no matter what they've been through.
Such a powerful story. So, thank you, Madison, for just taking time and sharing your journey with us. I know it is going to change someone's life. And when you write that book, we want to read it. We want to bring you back on for sure to share more about the stages of the book and how you got there. But thank you for sharing your story with us.
Absolutely. Thank you so much. I really, really appreciate it.